Connor, do you want to take over? Gab, I think you're muted. Right, should we start again? Gab, Seb, quit it.
You just look like you grabbed the camera.
Smash. Hello, guys, and welcome back to the Sportsman Untitled Extra. Today, we're going to be looking at championship teams in the FA Cup because the FA Cup third round this weekend. We're hoping to see some shocks, some surprises. And of course, Gab, we saw a championship side in 2023 get almost all the way to the FA Cup final. How far do you think a championship team can go in the competition this season? Is it a possibility we see a finalist or a semi-finalist?
I think you always have to consider that as a possibility. I remember when Millwall got to the final in 2004, having played no Premier League type teams on their route to the final, and then they lost 3-0 to Manchester United. So it does tend to need a favourable route. I think Hull, as a Premier League club, had quite a favourable route to play Arsenal in 2013 or 2014 possibly. So I think it does depend on the tie and the luck of the draw, quite literally. But I think one team that I am curious when it comes to the FA Cup this year is probably Wrexham, because I'm not sure I see them finishing the top six, but I think they are going to be keen to put themselves on a higher pedestal because of the nature of the club, and they're probably the team in the Championship that I think has the best chance in this competition.
Nottingham Forest at home for Wrexham, Connor, feels like a decent tie for them in terms of playing a Premier League team. From a Leeds fan and a Premier League team's perspective, it does feel like the door might be open this year, as it is with the others, in terms of the bottom half of the Premier League teams not really taking the competition seriously in terms of rotation, trying to stay in the league. Saw Crystal Palace win the FA Cup last season, of course, which was massive for them. But it still feels like this is a competition that teams like Leeds probably won't be prioritising.
Yeah, and I think there's been a shake-up, hasn't there, at the Premier League level to a certain extent. You know, but Burnley can still get out of it. You know, they're only, a point behind West Ham. Leeds are 8 points clear, and Sunderland are absolutely flying at this moment in time. So maybe years gone by, it was unequivocally obvious who was going down at this stage, or maybe in the next couple of weeks, it was, almost like a certainty getting into sort of January, February. So teams maybe were able to rotate a little bit more, but now it's looking like when you've had the surprise packages of the promoted temes, the likes of Nottingham Forest, the likes of West Ham United, teams like that can't really afford to be putting their best 11s out there, and that's kind of the positive for the likes of Wrexham and the positive for the likes of QPR going into these games, that they can really get at these teams. And we've mentioned it before, lads, it's the low confidence, it's the self-esteem of some of these sides who haven't had wins in, when you look at West Ham in particular, West Ham have had 2 wins in 14 games. So, getting that winning habit back is very difficult when you're on losing streaks. That should be a real sort of positive for these championship teams going against the Premier League big boys.
I think the other part of that argument is, Gab, is looking at how the teams at the top of the Championship and in the promotion race deal with the FA Cup this year. I think from a commentary perspective, we're quite happy to exit the competition and just focus on the league, given the small squad we've got. You look at a team like Ipswich, who might benefit from a few more games and using their wider squad. So in terms of those promotion chasers, who aren't the usual suspects, by the way, this season, it's going to be interesting to see how they approach this third round and the Cup moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. But I would also look at teams that, might have that bit more of an appetite for success in the FA Cup. And maybe I would look at teams a little bit outside that pack. And one team I would put forward is QPR. We've spoken about Wrexham, who are playing Premier League opposition in the FA Cup next weekend. Well, QPR are another one travelling to West Ham. And they're a team that I think could produce a bit of a scalp. I like the way QPR play. I think they're a team that, with their style could be conducive to a bit of a cup shock. They're a 4-4-2 outfit. They've got pressing forwards. They've got tricky, industrious wingers. They like to get the ball wide early and then pen the opposition in, bombard the box with crosses. And there's Premier League teams who might struggle to deal with that. So QPR are a side that I think could go for a good run.
Do you know what I kind of like to look at, who I'll put forward, is Sheffield United, because obviously having a really topsy-turvy season with Ruben Sellers in charge at the start, a lot of ground to make up in terms of the promotion race, but they've been one of the form teams in the league over the kind of last 8 to 10 games, winning an awful lot of games. They seem to have a favourable home tie in the third round against Mansfield, which you'd expect them to come through, Connor. Can you see a bit of Wilder magic in the FA Cup this season? Or do you think, again, he's probably prioritising the league?
Yeah, it's interesting with Wilder, isn't it? Because I think he's mentioned previously his love for the cup competitions, and he's sort of an old head when it comes to that sort of stuff. So I can't ever see Wilder taking the competition with any form of disrespect. And he's a Sheffield United fan, so for Sheffield United to get to quarterfinal, semi-final stage is historic, isn't it? It is. And if you're able to get to an FA Cup final, Gab's just mentioned that Millwall team with the likes of, Tim Cahill, who came through and then obviously went on to Everton, but it becomes part of, historical context. So Wilder were all about that. So if there's probably one manager, maybe in the Championship, who will take it more seriously than most, it probably is Chris Wilder, because he knows how much it means to Sheffield United. What I would say as a caveat there, Si, is I think a lot of it is based on, let's say if you're Sheffield United and you've got a good home standing, of which they have at Bramall Lane, it's all about getting the right teams at home in the FA Cup, and that's how you really progress. Away games, a tougher opposition can naturally obviously be a lot harder.
And I'm going to bring it back to Coventry's run to the FA Cup semi-final, but they got Sheffield Wednesday at home, which was a slightly tougher game than it is now. And then they got Maidstone at home in the 5th round, which is just a complete bonus tie, but it is complete luck of the draw when you get to that stage. Gab, I want to talk a bit about Norwich City as well. I think they've got Walsall at home in the 3rd round, if I'm not mistaken. But it feels like they're a team struggling in the relegation zone of the Championship right now, but with an awful lot of potential to potentially go on a cup run, which would massively boost confidence. And we've seen improvement under Philippe Clement as well. I've got half an eye on them as a team that might use the FA Cup to also get the confidence up and get them out of danger in the league.
Yeah, I have a similar feeling to you about Norwich, Simon. I really like what I've seen from them under Philippe Clement. I think that he's got the best stats and players that maybe weren't quite delivering under Liam Manning. I think he's changed the mentality of the club. I think his sort of catchphrase, if you like, if that's not too showbizy a word, is I don't ask, I demand. And I think that sort of raised the bar at Norwich City, and he's someone who is not just technically and tactically on point, but also who commands authority. And I think that's made a big difference. And you're looking at players like Jova Makama, who Norwich recruited from Lincoln City, has been absolutely on fire in those attacking areas. They've got Pele Matson, who covers every blade of grass in midfield. And so they've got some players who are coming into form despite the 2-0 loss to Stoke last time out. So I agree with you. I think Norwich City are a team that I expect to climb out of danger in the Championship. And, if the draws favour them, then I think they've got a chance in the Cup as well.
I think again, it's interesting us going back to the league form as well, though, Gab. I think you look at Norwich right now, obviously they are in the bottom 3 of the Championship, but there's players like Kvisgaarden, who they brought in from Bromby in the summer, who's not starting for them consistently at this moment in time. You just mentioned McCarm, obviously Sargent's back for them as well, but I think this period for Norwich is really, really key as well, because can you really go heavy on the cup competition? It's the 3rd round, isn't it? So can you really go heavy on the cup competition and put some of your big hitters in there? Let's say if they would start McLean and some of those big hitters that you've just mentioned there going forward, can they really do that with the fixtures that they've got coming up? And at this moment in time, them being behind a Portsmouth side that's hit form and behind a Portsmouth side that has 2 games in hand.
So I have an interesting theory on this, Connor. I think when you've got a small squad on your top of the league, I can see how the FA Cup might be seen as a distraction because you want to manage fitness. I think when you're at the bottom of the table and in a relegation dogfight, it's about gaining that winning feeling, however that comes. And so I think there can be a value to that for Norwich City, just rediscovering that winning feeling. It sounds like a catchphrase, but I also think it rings true that, and they've started to do this in the league. They, if you can start to get those results, the confidence grows, and we're seeing that a little bit with Norwich City already. But I think an FA Cup run would help that, and I also think they do have a fairly large sized squad already. I don't think the reason they're struggling in the league is because their squad isn't big enough. So I do think they've got players to bring in as well.
Would say that you start maybe a Josh Sargent in that one and he goes down injured. the finger is going to be pointed at Philippe Clement there, definitely. But yeah, I agree with what you say. I think they've had a good summer where they've brought in a lot of players, haven't they? So there should be a necessary depth. And when we've just mentioned Kvistgaard and there, Jova Makama, and then you've obviously got, Josh Sargent up front, there should be sufficient depth there.
That's why I think the amount of players they did bring in the summer, this is the competition for them to shine in without the pressure of the league game we saw affecting them under Liam Manning. I'm going to ask both of you to pick out a third round surprise, maybe including a championship team. Some of the fixtures that I've got lined up here: Wrexham versus Nottingham Forest, Cheltenham versus Leicester, Doncaster, Southampton, Cambridge, Birmingham, Charlton, Chelsea, Derby, Leeds, Portsmouth, Arsenal, West Ham, QPR. If you were hanging your hat on one of those, Connor, maybe for an upset, what would you go for?
Strangely enough, and self-sabotage wise, I'm probably going to go with Derby over Leeds, because I've mentioned before that I think Leeds are going to heavily rotate. Leeds' squad is quite threadbare at the minute, and a lot of our big hitters are needed for the Premier League. And this is what we were just talking about in terms of rotation for these Premier League sides. I think Derby will start very strong for this one. I think the game means a lot to them. It's going to be a home fixture as well. At Derby, what have they got to play for this season? I don't think they're going to go down. I don't think they're going to go up. So I think a cup run is probably a little bit more essential for them. So I'm going to go with Derby, mate.
How about you, Gab?
I'm backing Cheltenham then.
Yeah. Any further reason for that? Go on, give me more.
Well, I detailed this a little bit on the main show. I think that they've enjoyed a wonderful turnaround under Steve Cottrell. I think there's a bit of a feel-good factor around the club, and I think there's a lot of question marks around Leicester. I think they're quite an individualistic team, whereas I think Cheltenham have a lot of unity about them, and I think they're the kind of team that could pull off a shock.
Absolutely. And the last question on today's extra show, guys, is we'll come back to this when they're all out in the third round after the weekend. But which championship team do you think goes the furthest in this season's FA Cup? Connor, you want to go first?
I really liked your question about Sheffield United, and I really enjoyed my answer as well. So I'm going to go with Sheffield United.
Really enjoyed mine.
Good shout, Gab.
That sounds quite like a partridge line, that.
There is a lot of partridge on this show, isn't there?
Yeah.
I think Wrexham are going to go the furthest. I think they've got a big squad, and I think that they're a team that's probably most going to relish the FA Cup, and I think they're going to attack that challenge. Si,
go on. What's your pick?
Do you know what? I'm stuck between two that you've not mentioned. Or three, maybe.
Coventry.
4, 5. No, it's definitely not Cov. Ipswich, I think, can balance a cup run and their good form in the league. I think they rotate Jack Clark and Philogene every single week. They've got Blackpool at home. That looks a really kind fixture. I think they can go reasonably well in the cup this year. I also don't know if it's worth having an argument about Birmingham City in the same reference as Wrexham. I think Chris Davis needs a bit of form. I think Cambridge away, they should be able to beat them given the strength of their squad. I think they've got decent depth in a number of areas. I think Kyogo needs to start scoring eventually.
Disney cameras and Tom Brady will be there as well, won't they, in these FA Cup games at home? So
I don't know if it's the same sort of thing with Birmingham as we should be talking about with Wrexham. So maybe keep an eye on them. But I think I might go with Millwall. I just like Millwall. After all of that, I think Burnley away. Interesting fixture, but I think they can go there and get a result. It's a bit of a risk picking them as an outsider, obviously playing a Premier League team away from home. But I think Millwall have what it takes in the structure of their team and Alex Neil to win cup matches. So I'm going to back them to get to I'm going to say quarterfinals. Millwall.
Feels like Millwall as a club as well. Like the fan base as well want them to take the FA Cup seriously. They know that the Premier League is there as well. They've got that opportunity this season. But I don't think Millwall fans will demand anything less than to take that competition seriously.
And where do you I've said Millwall for the quarters. Where are you going for Sheffield United then, Connor?
Yeah, I'll go quarters. I don't think there's anything beyond that for Sheffield United. But I think what we were speaking about earlier, Si, if you can get Sheffield United at home for a couple of rounds and get some really good teams in and around there, I agree with what you said in terms of rotation. I think they've got enough to rotate. And I think Wilder is building something Sheffield United once again in terms of that remit of a really good home form. And yeah, I think there's players there that'll step up for the FA Cup campaign. So yeah, quarterfinals, why not Sheffield United?
For you, Gab, I can't remember who you said.
Wrexham, I think, could get to the semi-finals if they get a run of home draws, because I think at the racecourse, I think they can take on anyone pretty much. So, yeah, I'm backing Wrexham to reach the semi-finals of the FA Cup.
Wrexham at Wembley. There you go. Get that in the headline, producer said. That's what we like to see. Connor, Gab, thank you very much for joining us. I'll look forward to the FA Cup third round this weekend. We'll be back on Monday with Benjamin Bloom for your regular Sportsman Untitled episode. But like and subscribe. Get your thoughts in the comments down below. Which championship club do you think will go the furthest in the FA Cup this season? We'll see you next time.